Hi, Sri Lanka fans. You listen to the Murley End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by Dominic Machado and Nick Brookes. No Estelle today. She'll be back next week. First things first, before we get into the Afghanistan loss, you've got to hit that subscribe button. We need all your support. And also you've got to subscribe to the newsletter as well. That comes out the end of every week. We've got some of Sri Lanka's greatest writers and myself on board with this, or at least in the English language, with this newsletter. Some great articles last few weeks that you don't want to miss out on. That comes direct to your inbox, and it's all free as well. So don't you just subscribe to it, and tell your friends and family as well. Right, we're talking about Sri Lanka's loss to Afghanistan after the win against England last week. I went into with loads of confidence, and it seems to be slightly misplaced. Did you not think, Nick?
I did, Marky. It's pretty tough to swallow because I think we were all riding pretty high after the win over England last week. And then that was kind of tempered even before we got to the start today. I mean, such bad luck for Lahiro Kumara getting injured in training after bowling one of his best spells in international cricket. And then we get the news that Dimuth's going to replace KJP at the top, which I think felt like a bit of a head scratcher for all of us. And then just the way Sri Lanka batted today, kind of, it felt limp, it felt tepid. There wasn't a huge amount of intent, and the innings just kind of stalled along, didn't it? And as we saw, 240 was way subpar, I think.
Dom, Estelle can't be with us, but I think she was saying that she felt like picking Dimuth kind of just sets the tone for the way we're going to bat. And that's kind of how it felt, right? Because I kind of felt like everyone made a start, but nobody was there to make a finish. I do think, though, Angelo deserves a bit of an honourable mention because he tried to go and then he got caught on the boundary trying to hit a big six. But that aside, I just felt Sri Lanka were maybe 40 to 60 runs short today. And if they got those runs, it would have been a totally different back end of that game if we bowled the way we did bowl. And actually, Afghanistan would have had to take more risk, and we almost definitely would have got more wickets, right?
Yeah, the Karuna move is definitely a step back, but at the same time, it's in line with the way that Sri Lanka has been thinking about this tournament. They've been thinking about short-term fixes, bringing in Angelo and Demuth, 35 and 36-year-olds. When you have good talent at home, you have a Vishka Fernando at home, you have Wainindu Fernando at home, um, you have so many guys, Sahan Arachage, so many guys who could come in and play a role who you could grow and develop. But we've chosen to go for experience. We've chosen to go for solidity, right? And we hear these words mentioned over and over again. And I think so many of the problems we saw today are structural ones, or even over the last couple of days. So the batting, apart from Patham, Kusal Mendes, and Sadira, has been very, very poor in this tournament all around. And I think what the SL camp was thinking is, okay, if we get a score around 280, 290 on the board, and just make sure we get there, we can bowl Afghanistan out. We can make sure that they don't reach that target. And instead of being aggressive and going after the bowling, they said, okay, we'll let Demuth and Potham lay a platform. And then whoever goes out there, they're just going to kind of tick along and not go for any big shots. And it was very frustrating to see a reversion to an old school style of cricket. Well, not frustrating. Maybe we should have expected it, given what I've just said. The decision to bring in Demuth and have him be the only backup batter in the squad. The decision to bring in Angelo, right, and have him be the replacement, basically, effectively for or Dawson Shanika in the squad. So we've taken these, instead of moving forward and playing an attacking, aggressive brand of cricket, which we've done and tried to do, we've gone back on our sort of youth initiative and said, okay, let's go back to the old hands. Let's go back to an old way of playing cricket. And until the SLC makes structural changes such that those kind of things don't happen, decision making happens from a 30,000-foot view and not just what's going to help us most immediately in the next game. And we can talk about that with injuries as well. We've now used 18 players, which is ridiculous, right? We're only 6 games into the World Cup. Imagine if we were competing for a spot in the final and we had to play another 5 games. Would we even have a full squad at that point?
It's quite ridiculous. I think changing the roles, because clearly from it might feel like you're just dropping KJP and you're bringing in Dimmoth, but actually it shifts the way that the team, especially the top order, are batting. And I just thought it made our batting look quite toothless at the top of the order. I think the players play with different intent suddenly. And again, I'm just talking about what I saw on the pitch. I haven't been in touch with anyone who's been playing. None of them are in touch with me, of course. If any of them are listening and they want to be in touch with me and they need me to give them some words of encouragement, then I'm available on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. But I think it just changes the athlete mindset, right? Because they go from playing this really confident, really expressive form of cricket against England, and even some of the earlier games as well. And then suddenly it's like the carpet's been pulled out from underneath, and we're like, actually, no, just preserve your wicket. The most important thing is batting 50 overs. When in the past, when Sri Lanka have had success, they've done it a Sri Lankan way. They've found a way. They've created innovation. They've really embraced who they are. There's probably no other sport in the world where you have to really you what's inside you has to come out, right? And this uncertainty, and maybe it's all wrapped up in the kind of Sri Lankan ideals around shame and how it's no shame to lose to England, but maybe it's a shame to lose to a younger test playing nation. I think that's what's got us here. I'd love to know what you think about it, Nick.
Yeah, it's just a funny game to analyze, isn't it? Because I did feel like there was a lack of intent. But then also you look at occasions where intent is maybe misplaced. I'm thinking particularly of Kusal Mendes' dismissal. Like he kind of ticked along, and we saw one slog sweep, I think, against Rashid Khan, which came off. But then, there's 3 men back on the leg side. There's a deep square leg, cow corner, and long on. And he kind of hits a slog sweep straight down cow corner's throat. And you're thinking, what's going on in your head there? I mean, it didn't look like he shaped to hit it for 6. It just looked like a total brain fade. And as you guys say, with the lack of depth that's existing in this lineup at the moment, Sri Lanka went really quickly from like 130 for 2. Then Kusal and Sadira get out in quick succession. Suddenly you're 139 for 4. And that just shifts the goalpost so much, doesn't it? Suddenly it's gone from can we push on to 280 to 290 to how are we going to get up to 240, which we did in the end, thanks to a kind of unlikely little stand between Thikshana and Angelo. Got to credit Afghanistan because I thought they bowled well. I thought that the pitch looked like it got slightly easier to bat on under lights. But yeah, it was just a bit of a head scratcher today. And I think time and again throughout this tournament, the lower middle order has just been a huge problem for Sri Lanka. And when you've got so few runs in those spots, it bleeds into the top order and it's hard to construct an innings, right?
Yeah, there's a few wickets I will forgive, right? So I think Patham, Sadira, and even Kusal. I know, Kusal Mendes got caught out again in a manner that we've seen it happen to him repeatedly over the last kind of 18 months or so. So it's a bit frustrating. But actually, I thought the guys, those 3 in particular, played with the right intent. And maybe kind of you could argue maybe a little bit unlucky with the way they got out. And if you're going to ask Kusal Mendes to play the role that he's playing, we've got to accept that for every 100 he's going to get a score in the in the mid 30s, and he's going to get he's going to, what's happened to him the last couple of games is going to happen to him,
Yeah.
or the last couple of games before that, where he doesn't really score almost no runs. It's going to happen to him as well. So kind of forgive him for that. It's maybe the players around him. I just thought we're all like, the reality is, as a Sri Lanka fan, and if you don't agree with me, please leave a comment below or message us on social media. The reality is, it's got to the stage now where when you see Crystal Pereira's been dropped and Dimith has come in, and I don't think this is slowing Dimith, we all just think, nah, it's not good. It's against the better sides. It's not going to work, because if it does work, we're gonna crawl to 250 in about 48 overs or 47 overs, and then we're going to try and maybe get to around the 300. Like, getting to around 300 is a good score, but there's no real way that it's ever going to accelerate past that, right? And it's I don't know what it is. I don't know the players. I don't know I don't really understand the psychology of cricket batting. But whenever Dimith comes in, and he's a player I've enjoyed watching. He's been a great servant to Sri Lankan cricket. But I just think ODI cricket, at this point of where ODI cricket's got to, I don't think he really has a role in it. And I was really surprised that they brought him in. It made no sense to me whatsoever. But there you go. Shall we talk, though, about some of the positives? I think the first major positive was the emergence of the all-rounder Teekshana. You mentioned that already, Nick. Were you surprised by this cameo that he pulled off?
Yeah, I was. We've seen him sort of deliver in flashes, haven't we? But kind of in a more ticking singles, just batting sensibly. And today he came out and he was kind of lacing boundaries.
Yeah.
I think, we didn't see a six, did we, for the whole first 35 overs. And then Angelo hits one, Theekshana hits one too. It was nice to see. I hope he can develop his batting and, turn into a kind of guy who can be relied upon at 8 or 9 to add a quick 20 at the back end of the innings, because that's something that Sri Lanka have missed throughout the tournament. And, as much as we say there aren't runs coming from 5, 6, 7, throughout there's been very little coming from 8, 9, 10 and 11. And if you had guys who can come in right at the back end and, smack 20 or 15, smack even 15 off 8, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? And it can push your score up 30 or 40, which can make a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that when he was a schoolboy cricketer, I think he opened the batter for St Benedict's, and there was talk at one point of him being an all-rounder, but obviously he's lent into his bowling, and maybe the batting isn't what it once was. But I just think, you're so right, Nick. We've talked in previous episodes in the last couple of weeks about how weak our batting is, and actually to see him come and do that shows not just the skill he has, but also the confidence he has as a cricketer as well, right? To go, right, I'll come in at 8 or 9. I think he came in at 9 today, actually, and he was going to hit shots around. I love to see it, and I hope we see a lot more of it in the coming games and through the rest of his career, because hopefully he's going to be someone who's around for a long time. Dom, we're talking about the positives. Chameera played, he batted, didn't score too many, but that's all right. He's not really there for that. But he was bowling, and he was bowling some lovely stuff today, right?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good. He looked a little bit tired towards the end of his spell. I noticed some of the speed gun numbers were going down, but I thought he bowled with great control. I thought he bowled a really good line and length. I think in a different ground, he might have gotten a couple wickets on some of the short balls that he bowled. There was that one that I think it was Hazmat played that uppercut to just over the man, and I thought he bowled really well. I'm hoping that he's healthy after this game, because I think just seeing him play those next 3 games as we kind of build forward is going to be huge. And I think all the bowlers, for the most part, at least Rajatha, Madhushanka, all the fast bowlers, and Chameera bowled with very good control. I thought they were very good in the field. There were a couple tough chances dropped, but I thought given that it was a chase of 240, they bowled well, they bowled aggressively, they extracted bounce from the pitch, and it was good to see Chameera doing that. It was good to see Dilshan Madhushanka doing that, and he was again great with what was it, third or fourth ball, just absolute peach to Ramanola Gurbaz. And I thought it was properly on at that point when you get a wicket like Gurbaz, but Afghanistan showed their class and capability with chasing that down with no problems.
I think the two other kind of major elements that we haven't really discussed that are worth talking about is the pitch. I think Sri Lanka. Well, I'm not sure if they misread it because they lost the toss and had to go into
Yeah.
bat. But Kusal Mendes said that he would have batted anyway. And secondly, I just think as a batting side, Sri Lanka just need to chase. And actually, we get ourselves with the problem when we bat first because we just don't seem to be able to pace an innings correctly. I don't know how you feel about that, Nick. Is that the kind of vibes that you get?
Yeah, I do. I think that we've seen throughout the tournament that the batting's looked much better when they're chasing and they've got a target on the board than when they're setting. And I think it comes from a kind of lack of confidence again in the batting depth that they go out and I'm not sure that they've what if there's a target in mind, and I think that drastically kind of changes with every wicket that's lost, and it just seems that they're a bit caught between two schools. And actually, I've got to say today, when Sadira and Kusal were batting, I thought that things were going all right, and I thought
Yeah.
that they were kind of pushing on in the right kind of way. And then you lose a couple of wickets, and it just changes dramatically, doesn't it? I think, unfortunately, Charith and Dhananjaya have been kind of out of form, and yeah, we just sort of end up looking a bit kind of.
I don't think Charit's had the form. You see, I think that's just the way he bats.
Yeah, maybe that is just the way he bats, but I mean, there does seem to have been kind of like a regression from the player who we saw burst onto the scene. At least I think. Maybe I had too high expectations, or yeah, have kind of sort of hoped for too much from him. I think Dhananjaya is definitely out of form, and uh, I don't know. It's tough because he's not offering a huge amount with the bat and a huge amount with the ball. I'm a fan of the guy, but I do kind of wonder what message it's sending to to Wilalage, to Hamantha, when DDS is kind of consistently putting up subpar performances, and his spot just it seems to be automatic, right?
And we're a
I
bowl
do think.
too, right? We're relying on Angelo Matthews to bowl 4 to 5 overs, which we should not be doing at this point in his career.
I was going to say, I think it just today was the day we missed Hasaranga the most, right? Because if he'd batted and maybe we would have got 30 or 40 extra runs, maybe we would have out for a duck, we'll never know. And I just think when we were bowling that if you defending 240 on that track was just going to be an impossible task against a professional side like Afghanistan, who are really used to rebuilding innings and also used to playing against us as well. I like Dom thought, when Gurbaz went early, I was like, all right, all we need is another 9 wickets in the power play, and then we'll be over the line, right? And even actually when the second and third wicket went down, I was like, we just need to get wickets and clumps here. If we get 2 wickets very quickly and get 2 new batters, I think it can change everything. It didn't quite happen for us that way. It's very disappointing. On to India though, who no, I'm when your form's been indifferent, the last thing you need is a team that bowls you out for less than 50 or 50 exactly. Last time you played them, and a team like almost Dominic's got kids who are nearly going to school. We can't remember the last time Sri Lanka beat India, who weren't alive the last time Sri Lanka beat India. So yeah, it's a bit of soul searching. I think whatever they had on Thursday against England, they need to find that and bring it to the rest of the tournament. The tournament, as far as Sri Lanka concerned, I think we can all say we're definitely not going to get through to the semi-finals now. I'd love to be proven wrong. However, there is something else to play for, and that's to get into this ICC Champions Trophy, which, as it stands, will be held in Pakistan. We all know there's absolutely no chance that India will send a team to Pakistan, and we all know the ICC won't put on an event if India and England aren't going to turn up at it. And on the basis that England look really unlikely to qualify at the moment, Sri Lanka need to make sure they're in the top 7 and get themselves to that tournament, I suggest, because if we get there, there's a good chance we might host it. Lads, before I want to say wrap up, but I think the next bit will be a bit of a longer conversation. I think we need to pay tribute to one of the greats of Sri Lankan cricket. Uncle Percy passed away today. I'm not exactly sure how old he was. He was being a mainstay in the Sri Lankan on the sidelines for Sri Lanka since cricket began since Uncle Percy was born. Nick, you spent a lot of time with him at certain points when you were writing your book on Islands 11, which is available in all good bookshops. Do you want to tell us what he was like as a person and what your encounters with him were like, and how you think he would like to be remembered?
Oh man, it's really sad news. Percy was the most amazing character. Just talking about it, I'm getting a bit of goosebumps. I mean, I was put in touch with him by Jehan Mubarak when I first went to Sri Lanka, and I sent him a text, and he was immediately so welcoming, so hospitable. Told me some amazing stories. You know, like the first Sri Lanka game he went to was 1948 when Bradman's Australia team were in town. And since then, he's kind of been there for every moment. I posted a picture on Twitter of Gamli Dissanayake coming home just after Sri Lanka had got test status, and Percy's there in the background. You know, like the first test he was there, England 84 he was there, first test when he was there, and then he's been there. I mean, the guy was always at the cricket. He had an incredible joie de vivre, and a huge love for Sri Lankan cricket. I remember when I first started teaching at St Thomas's, he said, "Why don't we go for a night out?" And he took me to the nightclub underneath the Mount Lavinia Hotel. And, you know, he was kind of there. He was on the dance floor. He was holding court. He was smoking cigarettes. He was telling stories all night. And it got to about 3, 4 o'clock. And I was like, Percy, Uncle, I've got to go home. And he was like, stay out a bit. I'm going to go hit R&B. I'm not done yet. I mean, the guy, for someone in his 80s, had a gas. It was just incredible. And so many times I'd be at the cricket and, you know, just run into him there with his flag. He was always there. He was always, you know, rhyming, joking, laughing. He had time for everyone. Anyone who came up and talked to him, he would give time of day. He would happily hold court for an hour. And it hammered it home to me today when they mentioned his passing on comms. And I think everyone in the com box instantly knew who he was and instantly had a story about Percy. I mean, there's so many amazing stories from, you know, like him taking on Tony Gregg in the 70s to saying, David Boone, you Australian goon, you'll be back soon. And then David Boone, I think, started chasing him with his bat. He was, you know, he got himself into trouble with the police to support Sri Lanka. I said on Twitter once he got put in the back of a police car, and even the police respect him. They put on the radio for him so he could listen to it. I mean, the guy is just, he was one of a kind. I don't think we'll ever see a cricket fan like him again who generates that kind of respect, who's known the whole world over. And he has been a remarkable servant to Sri Lankan cricket for 7, 8 decades, and yeah, it's a really sad day.
I've always kind of thought in my mind he's like a Sri Lankan Ric Flair, isn't he? Like styling and profiling and rhyming on the side of the pitch wherever Sri Lanka go in the world. Like as a kid, I was fascinated because I couldn't figure out how he just got about everywhere. Right? How like I was like, what job does he do? I remember asking my dad, like, what job does he do where he gets all this time off? Because I need to do that job.
Well, you know, he worked for a cable company, ACL Cables, and they sponsored him to go to all the matches. And I actually went and saw him in the office once. And I asked some of his colleagues, like, what does Percy actually do? And they were like, no, he's been done working for a while. He just comes in every day and just tells jokes. He was an incredible dude. And there's actually one story that really sticks with me, which I think was a Sri Lankan under-19s game around 1980, that sort of time. They were playing Australia, and I think they were basically losing wickets faster than the game was running out of time. And the captain got a 50, and Percy decided that he was going to go and slow down the game. And so he ran onto the pitch and basically just started causing a ruckus. And And he took, like 10, 15 minutes out of the game. He got carried off by the police. They put him in the cells. And then, it was Sathasivam, the greatest Sri Lankan batter, who came and bailed him out. And when Percy got out of prison later that night, I think there were 1,000 people who'd come to kind of cheer him out. And that just, for me, kind of sums up the spirit of the man. He was a true eccentric and a truly, truly lovely human being.
Oh, Uncle Percy, he'll be massively missed by Sri Lankan fans all over the world. I think what a truly iconic character that we've all lost, and just as you say, Nick, I don't think his lights will be seen again. But who knows? Who may emerge in the future? Gosh, Dom. India next. What's your predictions for how that may well go?
That's a great question. I mean, the prediction part is easy. I think we can all predict that Sri Lanka probably is going to lose to India. India has been so good over the course of this tournament. Their bowling has been lights out. They've been the best bowling side in this tournament by a long shot. Their batting hasn't even really been tested very much. They struggled a bit against England on a tough pitch in Delhi, but their bowling has gotten them out of every single jam. And that is a stunning bowling attack. What I'd like to see, and maybe this is better in terms of predictions, I think I want to see Sri Lanka play with flair and aggression and the brand of cricket we know they can play with. I want to see them bring that energy that they brought against England. And I think that is what I'm looking for them. And I think one thing that I was impressed by today that gives me some hope is even when they were bowling and it was pretty clear that a target wasn't going to be defended, they were still trying. They were diving for catches. Mendes was moving fielders. They were trying to gum things up. They went with the short ball tactic. They weren't content with just bowling overs. So I think I want to see them continue with that energy, and I want to see them put some life back into their batting. And I'm hopeful that they will. Maybe the burden of, oh my gosh, we have a chance to make the semifinals and we just have to beat Afghanistan, triggered that Sri Lankan fight or flight response of do not shame the country. But now when maybe, not everything is lost, but there's a little bit more freedom, they'll go out and express themselves and challenge India.
Let's hope. Nick, do you see any obvious weaknesses in the Indian side?
Well, I think the only thing you can point to is the fact that they've got a really long tail, right? Since Hardik got injured and they've changed Shardul Thakur for Shami, which has definitely strengthened their bowling. It does mean that they've got 8, 9, 10, and 11 who are kind of genuine tail enders. And I guess you'd say that one of the areas where Sri Lanka have been best throughout this tournament is power play bowling, right? Especially with Chamira coming back. You've got Dilshan, Rajitha, and Chamira who can come and bowl with a new ball and kind of cause problems. So I think Sri Lanka's only hope in this game is take wickets up front. If you can get India 2-3 down in the first 10 overs, then the door opens a tiny crack. And, Sri Lanka are such an unstable, fluctuating, tumultuous side that it would be quite typical after producing a disappointing performance today that they come out and just tear into India. So yeah, I think there's always a glimmer of hope, but it's a small glimmer.
If they beat India, then you've got to say it's back on, right? Like on the basis that everyone's calculations was that we can only afford to lose one game. I mean, we didn't assume we assumed we'd beat Afghanistan and lose to India, but if it was the other way around, we'd take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be quite a struggle to get a positive result there. There's been a few questions coming in because I asked them early doors. In fact, I got a question came in from Amulius Victor before we even asked them, and he's talking about Dimmoth and him wasting 15 balls in the power play. I think we're kind of good. We've raked over that enough now. We don't need to. I mean, it's dead already. Like, we don't need to kick it anymore. Then Ara asked about the word experience. DDS demonstrated test players, but cannot recollect a match winner ODI knock against a non-associate member. So, what experience do they have in this format? Is that a reason to pick them? And the analogy he used is, I had to retake some exams at school a few times. I was there for experience. That it does not mean I'm good at it. Which I think is a kind of fair analogy. I mean, I've had to retake a lot in my life, so like I will add that I think you do also learn a lot from failure. Don't underestimate that, Ara. But I mean, I get what you're saying, because I think there has been a heck of a lot of consistent collapsing of the Sri Lanka batting lineup, and I think it's a frustration that we're all feeling. I'm kind of interested what happens in the next few games, because I kind of feel that there's a few players in this squad who are back to that old Sri Lankan adage of just playing to get to the next squad, right? Because I think there'll be a big rethink after this. And I think, if we know that this is going to be a 50 over Champions Trophy and we know we're going to be there, we're going to be thinking about what's our best 11 on that pitch. I from watching a lot of the cricket, I think not just for Sri Lanka, I think for a lot of other teams, I think we're at the stage where we've got to think your best T20 players are not necessarily your best 50 over players, because I look at our sides and I think we're really good at 20 overs. It's around that 20 over mark where the wheels start to kind of fall off a little bit, especially with the bat. I don't know. Maybe that's me overthinking it. I don't know what you guys think about that.
It's funny. I was going to go in the opposite direction and say, I think one of the things that Sri Lanka, especially SLC, falls back on is experience is something. Well, one, in Sri Lankan culture, it's very important. And Mark, you can probably relate to this. I remember my father always telling me, whether it was driving a car, whether it was shaving, whether it was doing anything for the first time, here, let me show you. I have experience. I know how to do it. And this idea that experience is a major, major factor. But where it really comes in, obviously experience does matter. Knowing how to read situations, knowing how to play situations does matter. But when experience is a replacement for actually being able to perform in the format, like Demuth or like DDS, right? That's where we have a problem. Experience is well and good when you know how to play a game situation. But if you haven't been playing those game situations well, it doesn't matter how many times you've been there. So I think we have to toss aside this experience and look at, well, what players actually have the skill sets to do well in the way that we play 50 over cricket in 2023. And then how do we give them experience to kind of hone the skills that they have? So it shouldn't be experience first, but we should be giving people experience. And one example leaps to mind, Rachin Ravindra hardly played any one-day cricket, hardly played any international cricket, and he has been setting this tournament alight, hitting all kinds of bowlers all around the park. Experience is, at least for me, a cover for, well, how do we justify having someone who has adequate skills, right? Why do you include Demuth over Avishka? There's no logical, rational reason for actually doing that. And experience is the only thing, experience and maybe solidity, whatever that may mean, to make those decisions. So I see it as kind of this code word that we use to justify irrational decisions.
I think Ratchin's a great example you picked up there, and I think it's only a matter of time before we get by we, I mean Sri Lanka have a generation of young players who are named after amalgams of their favourite cricketers. Mm-hmm. We could have Aranath or Dimjalo. That might like a little Dimjalo's running about in the team. That might be not too far down the line. But yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you said there, Dom. Nick, where do you sit on the experience fence?
Uh, I'm not sure really. I think at the end of this World Cup, you've got to look towards 2025 and 2027. And I think it's time for, I mean, it's hard because it's a young side, isn't it? But I think it's time for the older statesmen to go and to keep building with youth. I think it's easy to get down after today, but there's a lot more to build from this tournament than there was from 2019, right? Um, Cruz Poulet and Ovishka are two top five batters who I'd like to see brought in immediately. I think the bowling, there's lots to work from there. And clearly we need to find someone or guys who can bat 6 and 7 and who can do what, the likes of Maxwell, what we saw Jimmy Neesham doing, what Hardik or Sky do for India, guys who can come in and change an innings in 30, 40 balls, because Sri Lanka just doesn't have that at the moment, right?
Yeah, I wonder if the solution is, and this isn't for I say this isn't for this tournament, but I never thought Dimmoth and Angelo would be playing a World Cup game with Shamira in the side. If you told that to me a few weeks ago, and I thought you've lost your mind, but obviously that's what's happened. I wonder if the solution might be is if KJP and Kusal Mendes end up batting lower down, and that you bring in more kind of orthodox cricketers higher up. Maybe the two that you mentioned, Avishka and Cruz Poulet, end up in higher up the order. And again, you must remember Hasaranga could have been one of those innings finishers type batters potentially. And obviously his loss, I think, is that whole adage about players never look so good when they're not available. Well, when Indu his reputation grows with every game, doesn't it? Anyway, guys, should we leave it there? Lots to talk about going forward. We haven't even mentioned Charmry tearing up the WBBL. Two player of the match awards in her first 3 games. The third game that was on today that I woke up for at 5:30 and it didn't start till 7:30. Didn't go so well for her, but I'm sure she'll be back in the wickets and the runs very, very shortly. I think they're playing again another couple of days. There's still lots of World Cup cricket to talk about in the coming days and weeks. And I'm sure after that, this big review that SLC will no doubt have. And things will change because that's the nature of Sri Lankan cricket. And I'm sure we'll all be talking about Tom Moody's triumphant return to Colombo very shortly. If you've got this far and you haven't subscribed, then please do. Please sign up to the newsletter. Thank you for listening, watching, interacting with the Merrily. We love hearing from you. We'll be back again soon. See you all later. Bye.